There's a lot of things that I've seen over the years where, in terms of mistakes being made during a brake job, during performing a brake job. And I guess I could think of three basic things. So when you're talking about the brake disc, okay, so you have this brand new brake disc and you just go and you want to put it on your car. Okay, that's great, but you have to make sure that all the mating surfaces are clean. It's very, very important. So especially in some of these areas of the country that are prone to rust or they may salt the roads, it's very important that once you remove the rotor and you apply the new one, that the mating surface, the hub mating surface that the rotor is being applied to is totally clean. So that needs to be descaled. You need to take all the rust off, usually a wire brush will do. But it's really important that that's really clean. So once you have the rotor on and then you go to put the pads in, the biggest mistake I've seen is that people use way too much of the lubricant. And when it comes to applying lubrication on the brake pad, you need to consider a lot of different things. One thing that I think is most important to consider is that there are probably 50 million cars produced every year, give or take a few million, depending on the year. But none of them leave the factory with grease on the abutments. Okay, this is something that, it's hard to believe, but that's actually the case. So if you were to go to the dealer and pull a wheel off a car and check to see if there's grease on the abutments, you won't find any. And the reason why they keep it dry is because with the lubrication, with any kind of grease, of course, it's going to immediately attract grit and grime from the surrounding area. You can imagine just driving down the road, the amount of grit that's kicked up around the wheel, and the dirt just goes right to where the grease is because that's where it wants to stick to. Be that as it may, there's a lot of people that are dedicated to putting grease on the abutments, and that's fine, to each their own. But one thing that's super critical is don't put too much on. Put the absolute minimum that you feel you need to put on because, again, the grit and grime will be attracted to it, and you're going to cause more problems than you thought you were solving by doing that. So keep it down to a minimum. Don't put it on the back of the pad. The grease is really meant for when original equipment companies do provide grease in their brake pad box. It really is for multi-stage shim applications where they want the shim sliding together, so they will provide grease for that. So it's not meant for the abutments. Although we've seen some, because some of these companies are run by aftermarket guys who think you need to put grease on everything, so they do provide it. So we get all kinds of statements being made in that regard. But whatever the case is, bottom line is keep it down to a minimum. Okay, let's just do that. Another thing that I've seen over the years is when you've got your rotor on, you've got the pad in there, and particularly on sliding calipers, it's very important to make sure that those sliders are clean. So you want to take the bracket off from the body of the caliper, and you want to make sure those guide pins are clean and properly lubricated, because if the caliper cannot clamp down properly or retract properly, you're just opening up the door to a multitude of brake problems. Uneven braking, increased wear, and poor performance. So this is another key aspect that people need to pay attention to.